Hey everybody, it's me, Deplorable McAllister, Snarky McAllister, Linda Paris, and I'm here with my friend Daryl James, no relation to Letitia James. And Daryl, if you remember, is a super soldier, part of the super soldier program. Um, and he has had encounters with reptilians and also grays and probably a lot of other ETs. I guess I'll ask that question. But thank you for being here, Daryl. And maybe you want to tell people what you did in the military real quick.
Yeah, sure, Linda. Well, I was a CB in the military. I had a marijuana paraphernalia charge when I was around 18 or 19. And I didn't join the Navy till I was 21. So my two choices were construction and be a cook. So I decided to go into construction instead. Yeah, I was in NMCB 7, Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 7 for 5 years. And then after that, I transferred over to JMF RAF St. Morgan in St. Morgan, England, which is in Cornwall. The closest big city is Plymouth, and then there's like another city called Newquay next to it. And yeah, I got on this underground base, and that's what it was. It was an underground base, and I was introduced into the secret space program by my executive officer. His first name was Robert.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because
Mhm.
I have this question written down and you just hit on it. So that all happened near Cornwall.
Yeah, all that happened in Cornwall. Yeah, like battalion was just normal Navy, regular Navy, but yeah, all this other stuff happened in Cornwall. Yeah, and I was introduced to it by him, and as I was going through the program, I had to walk these two civilian workers from the corporation Siemens into the underground base, and there were these sliding glass doors and what looked like a metal detector, and I passed through it, but it was actually something that read all of your biometrics. It knew if you smoked, drank, did drugs, if you had clots in your body, what your IQ scores were. And my IQ scores were high, and IQ is a sign that you either have abilities or you can be taught abilities like telepathy. A lot of all the ET tech is like a telepathic link, the ships and everything like that. You have to create a link. And yeah, I was offered a pilot, an inmate commander in the U.S. Navy and pilot of a 4 kilometer long starship by my XO. And yeah, I saw Mike Lucchino there. He was, at the quarterdeck looking through paperwork. I'm guessing it was the paperwork that was found whenever I walked through the scanner. It almost seemed like he wanted to see me in person, kind of thing.
That's our
And
mutual friend, Michael Aquina.
yeah, yeah, Mike Lucchino, yeah. And
Michael Aquino harassed me on YouTube when I was writing and making videos about him. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry about that.
That's okay. There was a guy in base that, after I got back from the program, it seemed almost like there were people on base that were offered to join it but refused, and they became like the spies of the people who did join the program to see if they had any memories. So he would ask me, like, there was this guy named Orlando that would ask me, you know, do you believe in reptiles? And I said, no. And I already had my mind wiped and I had no recollection of any of this. And he said something like, oh, Johnson does. And then he said that there's a machine. He was told about a machine that can take the consciousness out of a body, but it has to be done before puberty, but it can't be done when they're too young because the body is kind of like a vehicle. It mostly sits around and waits to be manned. And
So,
he says, yeah.
so can
Hmm.
I ask something right here? Because I don't remember you saying that. I do remember actually you saying that, but I didn't quite catch it the first time or the other interviews that we did. A machine that can take the consciousness out of a body, but it has to be done before what age?
Before puberty.
Before puberty. So let me ask you this. If it's not done before puberty, then is this how some people are able to transfer their consciousness? They have that ability to do that.
Well, it's yeah, they not only have that ability, it's mostly like a lower fourth density, like we're third density, and these
Yeah.
reptiles are in like the lower fourth, which is kind of like the astral plane, the spirit world.
Yeah.
So they just, inherently, like naturally have this ability of just being able to project their consciousness into a body, especially if it has no soul, no consciousness itself. And yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's
That's
something that
interesting that
yeah,
they
yeah.
need to have no soul before they can do it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean,
Scary.
I heard stories of Michael Aquino, and I saw it for myself where this reptile wasn't inhabiting the body, so he just kind of like stared at you like a kid waiting for his candy or something like that. He had like this giddy kind of smile on his face, and he would just glare at you whenever no consciousness was in the body.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
So,
And yeah, yeah.
but what do you suppose he did when his consciousness was not in his body?
Well, that same person, Orlando, told me that he went to the underground base, did a 12-hour shift, and as he was walking to the shift, he walked by the break room. And the break room had windows in it on the hall, so you could just peek in and see if anybody was in there. And he said he saw Michael Aquino sitting down in a chair, staring at a blank television screen. And then when he did his 12-hour shift and he walked back out and he looked at that same break room, he still saw him just sitting there, just staring blankly at like a television that wasn't even on. So it seems like it doesn't do anything. It just kind of sits there and waits for something to
But I
enter.
mean, where do you think the consciousness was while he was sitting there staring, while the body or the vessel or the shell was there just staring?
Yeah, I asked Orlando the same question. I said, "Well, what happened to the actual consciousness that is Michael Aquino?" And he said he didn't know.
So
And
maybe he had a meeting on Mars or something.
well, I mean, they can trap souls. They're used for controlling artificial intelligence, like different machines that you use and things like that
Oh,
that use
that's
artificial.
terrible.
Yeah, so it's almost like a trapped soul that is kind of forced to like man like these vehicles or weapons or anything like that.
Oh, but they become the weapon.
Yeah, they become the
They're not
weapon.
in their
Yeah.
body anymore. They're stuck in the machine.
Yeah,
Oh, wow, that's horrible. That sounds awful.
yeah, it
Uh,
does.
but so if you have a soul, though, they can't do that to you.
No, I mean, well, they can pull the soul out. They have the ability to pull it out. And I was also told about my exec. He also told me, my executive officer, things about like what you were talking about. Like there are, NPCs as they call them. There are people without consciousness, and they're usually, like sociopaths and psychopaths and things like that. These are the people. Human beings aren't really meant to be that cruel. And
Yeah,
it's usually just the ones that, yeah, either don't have a consciousness or they have like a reptilian consciousness in their body instead.
yeah.
And yeah.
So just to kind of straighten this out for myself and for other people that are watching, um, that do are okay. The way I understand it, reptilians were bred and created at some point. They're not organic. They didn't just organically come to life. Somebody made these things to be soldiers or something, like to be warriors or something. Do you know any about that?
Well, I was told that they were actually cast out of their original universe by
Oh, okay.
like a higher density beings. And I guess because of the karmic reasoning behind it, they didn't want to destroy them all, so they just shoved them into our universe.
Oh, thanks a lot. Uh,
But there are reptiles that are like natural inhabitants of Earth and natural inhabitants of other worlds. But the whole kind of like draconian empire that you hear about, that whole empire, that whole thing, that was actually like a different beings from another universe that were kind of
yeah.
expelled into ours.
And when you said that, I just kind of made a connection in my head that probably they used genetic material from the organic reptiles in order to breed or whatever they did with these, because these things are augmented and everything too, aren't they? These draconian and so are the warrior caste and draconian ones are the ones that are here, correct?
Yeah, they've definitely been augmented, and it's also to prolong their life expectancy because they live thousands of years. I mean, most ETs live, we should live over 800 years in our, like our true potential, as far as like if we weren't being poisoned through the air and water and everything else. But yeah, these beings live thousands of years and they use the type of like technology to prolong their life. And yeah, they do also do augment their bodies. And, like I said, it is like the astral plane, but once you get up to their level as far as density or higher, then they're just flesh and blood like us that live
Yeah.
a very long time. But to a third density being, they seem very, powerful and all-knowing because time is an illusion and you really don't see it till you get to the fourth density and above. And, they used to do things like perform sacrifices to attract these beings. And it creates something called loosh. And
Yeah.
children create the most loosh. And they'll immediately come out of like that astral plane, that spirit world. If you do these type of things, commit sacrifice, and it just draws their attention and kind of pulls
Yeah.
them out of the shadows. And then, they'll answer things for you, like what war should we fight? What should we do? Because time is an illusion to them, so they can see down timelines and they can see these things. And yeah.
I also had someone who indicated that they feed off this stuff. So they can, they're drawn towards it. Like if you're having a ceremony, I guess they can also call up different entities if they want to. But is that really reptilians? Are they calling up reptilians or are they calling up archons?
Well, archons, as far as I know it, they're almost like they're not really self-aware. They're kind of almost like they just know they want to feed on loosh.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what they are. And reptiles are extremely good at manipulating archons and
Really?
having to
I
use their
thought it was the
abilities.
other way around.
No, no, as far as I know it, yeah, the reptiles, the archons are almost like a force that really don't even know that they're there. All they know is they want to feed and that's it. And yeah, the reptiles can manipulate them. And then my exo also, I asked them what the upper fifth density would be if they're lower fifth. And this is a captain in the Navy in his khakis telling me that elves, fairies, and gnomes, like they're real and they exist in this upper fourth, this upper spirit realm. And I asked if they were evil, and he said we would consider like, the lower fourth evil, but the upper fourth would be like mischievous in the sense that they'd like to kind of mess around with people's lives and things like that.
Hide their shoes and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, they're the more mischievous in the
Yeah.
astral realm.
Yeah, I've heard this over and over again that fairies and elves and all that stuff is real. A lot
Hmm.
of people are having psychic downloads. That's another thing you said, and I wrote this down, that the communication with ETs is mostly psychic. And
Yes.
that's how they don't talk. They don't open their mouths and talk like we do. They communicate psychically. And you said something about a link. Is that like a portal or something or a link? What do you mean by that?
Oh, like creating a telepathic link with a ship or something artificial. I remember on the ships on the craft there were two black panels in front of you, and you would put your hands on these two black panels, and you just close your eyes and you clear your thoughts. And I'd hear like a female voice in my head say, "Good morning, Daryl," and I would say, "Good morning, Mama Bear," because since I was the pilot of the ship, it was called the USS SS Nimitz, which meant, United States ship, secret space. Nimitz, but since I was the pilot, I was allowed to nickname the ship. And it was a female, like Pleiadian soul that volunteered herself for this. And positive beings usually don't use consciousness. They have like a way to bypass it with their AI, the type of AI they use.
Oh, okay.
But for things like starships, there's such a complex ship that they actually require real artificial intelligence with an actual soul interacting with the AI.
So how does artificial intelligence obtain a soul?
Well, it's just a soul. There's just so many souls out there, and souls get captured. They're kind of like silver in the universe. They could be used for trade and things like that. And a lot of these negative ETs will just capture consciousness, capture soul, and then they use it for just their tech, their technology in general.
Yeah, it's kind of like freaky to think about that your soul could be captured and put in something, and then you're just like stuck, like a chair. Donald Marshall said
Hmm.
that when people, well, I don't like to use the word disciplined, but if you're down there and you're part of the underground uh, complex, and you're a slave basically being held down there. If you quote misbehave too much, they can put your consciousness into something and you'll just be in there for the rest of your life, trapped inside this. I guess your vibrations go way down when you get trapped inside a rock or a chair or something like that. That is, rocks are, I guess everything is alive in its own way,
Hmm.
even a chair because it's wood or whatever it's made out of. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there at you.
Yeah, I mean, it could be thousands, it could be millions of years. Yeah, I guess in the long run, it's not considered a long time, but to us, it's considered extremely long time. But yeah, you can get, and that's something when you're with the negative ETs, the negative forces, they threaten you with that a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
that would be a real threat
hmm
that
hmm
people would, just stop. That's like a nightmare Twilight Zone thing right there.
Yeah, like purgatory, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so when you get a connection, is that through your DNA?
Well, I mean,
A
the link.
connection to a certain ET, maybe that you think is a familiar. In other words, you think you're talking to someone, and then I guess you try psychically to contact that person or that being.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the connection, the link, the more time you spend with individuals, the easier it is to create the link. Like I remember when I was in Solar Warden, I was put into a room with two other like Nordics, like Pleiadians. And the reason what was because the navigator was a male and he was always sitting down next to me to my left. And then like this, she was like science, a female, where she would look at for like anomalies in space and things like that. So we were all had like a very strong link. And then there was like a one Nordic called Mother, and she was like an elder ET, and she was kind of like the headmaster of the school, and the children would learn about they would relearn about their past lives. So any technology they ever used in a past life, they would automatically know how to use it again. And she had a very strong telepathic link with the children because she was always with the children. So the more you hang out with an individual or a group of people, the stronger of a link you have. And you can actually pick up on them anywhere in the ship if you concentrate on them, if you think about them. You can actually my what is it? Your ears are burning. It's kind of real. If
Yeah.
somebody's talking about you, you can actually kind of pick up on the conversation because somebody has been focusing on you. So you can actually pick up through a telepathic kind of link in itself just by somebody like, even if it's not negative or even if it's positive, you kind of realize when someone else is talking about you.
That's the way these, well, there was one more thing I wanted to ask about that whole thing you just said. So people are telepathically communicating on a ship, but what about the ship itself? That is communicating as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the ship is communicating as well. And since I was the pilot, I had like a very strong link. And I remember one time we were attacked. And I didn't even create a specific link like with the black panels or anything like that. And I was communicating with the ship to try to figure out where we were being hit and everything like that. And the ship was saying things to me like, breach hull 3, section 7 and 8. And it was just letting me know where the hull was being breached while we were under attack. And yeah, the ship itself, the pilot has the strongest link. And I could also do things which the like the Nordics couldn't do, I remember, where I could kind of manipulate the aura of the ship to kind of create almost like cartoon characters like Thumpers and Bambis. The
Wow.
kids were like entertained by it, and they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to kind of manipulate the aura of the ship to kind of create yeah, and I could create like just little cartoon characters and things like that to
Some
entertain the kids.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
I know that because I read Lieutenant Corso's book the day after Roswell. And at some point, a few years after Roswell, I don't know how long, it could have been 10 years for all I remember. But anyway, they got a hold of the secret Roswell files in the military, but they didn't tell their higher ups. They didn't report it. They decided they would just label them like any other they gave it the same codes and stuff that a lot of stuff they find they use, so it just fit right in. They knew where they were. So at a certain point, they gave them all to Corso and he took them home and he started looking at them. And what they found out in the end, after they took them back into and some kind of lab and started looking at them, was that the ship, which was a disc, um, the actual gray, it wouldn't run for anything else, for anybody else. The gray that crashed in that ship was the only one, and actually the gray had to actually somehow become part of the ship. Like there were places to put its legs and its body and its hands and its head and all that stuff, so that it became part of the ship. Otherwise, the ship's not going anywhere because the gray goes with the ship. Does that make sense? But anyway, they found in their skin, the skin of the grays, were all these, it was actually navigation. That's where the navigation was, in the skin of the grays, which is like, wow. But it kind of piggybacks off what you were talking about just a second ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, like implants, even positive ETs use implants and things like that. And negative ones, they allow the tech in their body to be ruled by the artificial intelligence. So it's almost like a
Oh,
Borg kind of hive mind kind of thing whenever you're stuck in more of a negative aspect. But the positive beings, they still use tech, but they don't allow AI into their bodies. Like they don't allow AI to link with them. And when they do use AI, they only use it for very specific things.
yeah.
But yeah, there are implants, things to boost their strength, things to help them link properly with certain technology, things like that. And when they go back to their home world and they're kind of like, off of a deployment, I guess you would say, all of this is removed and only like a certain amount of tech is still kept in their body, which is just to kind of, heighten their bodies, heighten their strength, their
Yeah.
intelligence. It helps heighten all aspects of the body itself.
So, wow. Um, that was interesting. So I've got so much stuff written down here. Um, so I'm going to ask a question that I really want to ask. So all these freaky people are like Kim Kardashian, or who's some of these people like Adele, okay? Now, in that case, I know that's not Adele. She didn't go on a diet and have the body of a teenager after that. That didn't happen. She weighed a lot. Now they're saying that this teenager is Adele. But we've really got some freaky looking people out here now. Do you think these alien hybrids are out and running around? And if so, have you seen this guy? Well, it's like the Bogdanov brothers. What do you think those things are?
I think that might just be too much plastic surgery, but you're right. I mean, there are hybrids. They do look for certain DNA bloodlines, and but a lot of it, I mean, these freaky people, as you put it, I mean, the way my executive officer put it, he almost had pity on them because he was more of like a higher density, being. He was more on the
Yeah,
positive aspect, and he had kind of pity for them. And like he told me, basically, these elites, all these people you hear about, their master plan is to nuke the world and live in the underground bases and the end, and that's it. And I couldn't wrap my head around this. I said, why are there people like that that would just destroy everything?
yeah,
And he said that when they were kids, their parents raped them every day, so they just hate everything. They hate everything. They hate themselves. They hate life, and that's just kind of like when you go on this satanic path, that's exactly what it is. It's just, in a sense, it's not their fault because they were once innocent children,
yeah,
and this happened to them their entire childhood, which completely skewed themselves as adults. And yeah, I mean, they're horrible people, and these people need to be stopped, and they need to be, executed if it's seen fit. But I mean, in the same sense, they were once innocent kids too, and they were just twisted
Well,
into something else.
what about Donatella Versace?
I mean,
How do you explain that?
and I mean, and a lot of this because of people are, you know, aging dramatically. I'm seeing it too. A lot of these actors,
Well, they don't have any of their adrenodrome. That's what I like to call it when I'm on YouTube.
yeah, yeah, they don't have any
Adrenodrome.
of the shots. Yeah, the injections that they get. So they're aging, very quickly. Like the second, what was it? The second Top Gun movie. That was the only time I ever really saw him age, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
It's the only time I ever saw age on him. Now you can see all the plastic surgery, he's getting all the tucks, but before that, he stayed perpetually 35 years old.
Well,
And
I
that's
don't
because
even
of that
think this
drug.
new one is him.
It
I
might, and they can make clones, and they make clones of these people, and they're pretty much this, like I said, soulless vessels that almost have like a program. And that's why you see these certain people. I can't remember who is it. It's not Willard Scott, but the other guy on Good Morning America, where they said something
Oh
about,
yeah. Ooh, he just dropped to the ground.
yeah. Well, some woman mentioned something about her Catholic school days and said like Jesus or something, and the guy just like he just zoned out.
Oh, he
Like,
just like went.
yeah, he
Who
just zoned
was
out.
that?
And yeah, I think that's like maybe that's probably the reptilian consciousness or whatever, this
Yeah.
astral plane consciousness leaving the body and coming back. Because that was something else I was told about with my XO was he said that when people get looking glass technology, the first thing they usually ask to see, which is a looking glass, is being able to see anywhere in time pretty much. And just being able to observe, or you could step through the looking glass and be in that time
Oh,
period.
really? I didn't know that part.
Yeah, yeah, that's why they call it the looking glass because, Alice stepped through the looking glass.
Right.
And he said the first thing they asked to see once they get high enough clearance for that technology is Christ. And I asked if he was real, and he said yes, and his name holds power. But he said nobody's allowed to step through the looking glass at that time period because it would be like cataclysmic. It would alter the timeline
Yeah.
so much that they don't know what would happen. And he said even the Satanists know better than that. Not even the Satanists will step through at that time.
Well, have you seen that little kid that he disappeared, but for a while he was talking about how CERN broke reality and caused all this stuff to happen. And he came up with free energy and everything, and then he disappeared and he went away for a while and he came back. I don't know, he's probably working for the cabal in some form or another. But he was talking about the multiverse and how CERN, by no means do I really understand this, but it sets something off like just like microscopic that caused the Mandela effect and everything because and multiple timelines to happen and stuff like that. Does that sound possible to you?
It sounds possible, but like one thing I was told about timelines is they exist, but there's also major convergence points where they all come back together
Oh,
and they become one timeline again, and then they break apart again and they come back together. And I was told like that's kind of
like
like
the
how it works.
wave.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really think when President Trump does the wave thing, he's not referring to the wave. Whatever, he's talking about this stuff, like the wheel, nothing, everything's temporary except the wheel, the big wheel, the big wheel. And remember in The Shining when that kid rode the big wheel up and down on the carpet, and the carpet had the design of like some kind of DNA design on it that was supposed to be Art Deco, and he's constantly riding the big wheel down, so I feel like these are the things that Trump is talking about, keeps saying the wave. And
Mm-hmm.
Juan Savin told me that these timelines, they're waving, they're moving, and sometimes they cross over into each other.
And yeah,
So,
yeah. So yeah, I do believe in timelines to a point, but at the same time, I was taught anyways that there are multiple timelines, but there's these major points. and
Yeah, where they
history and
cross
time where
over,
they all
maybe,
come back together. Yeah.
or come together.
They come together and then they branch off again. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they come together, is that like the Mandela effect or something where you got half of the people that think one thing and then half of the people that think something else happen?
Exactly. Yeah. Like the Berenstain Bears and all that stuff. And is there a cornucopia and the Fruit of the Loom emblem and things like that? I've heard all those. Yeah.
It's funny the things they bring up that,
Hmm.
you know,
And there's certain lines in music too that have changed. Like I
yeah.
remember something else when I was younger, but now it's something completely different. Yeah.
Well, this isn't on my list, but let me ask you this while we're talking about this. Um, are there high, do you believe that there are higher, I'm talking 12th dimension, way up there, that can uh, be in the multiple timelines or call themselves over into this timeline or an aspect of themselves or another one of themselves that might be better for what problems exist or whatever, and they can move between these timelines and utilize their alternate selves in the timeline that they happen to be on. Did I blow that? I mean, does that make any sense?
Yeah, like I was told like ninth density beings were like the highest. And I know there's tw I've heard people say 12, but I was told by my XO that not even ninth density beings know anything higher than ninth. And yeah, higher density beings can manipulate lower densities, lower timelines, things like that. Just like, like, we can manipulate certain things on Earth. We can manipulate animals. We could, teach them, and they're lower density than us, horses and things like that. And we could teach lower density beings to us. We can manipulate their timelines, manipulate them into our life. These higher density beings can do the same things. They can change timelines. They can alter timelines. They can bring timelines back together. And but I mean, do they know everything? I mean, I asked him. He said he was fifth density, and I'm only third. And I said, well, if you're so much higher than me, more enlightened than me, then what's the meaning of the universe and life and everything? And he said that's something ninth density beings are just now beginning to understand. Like not even the highest ones they know of. There could be something higher, but we don't know of them, is how he put it. Not even the ninth know anything higher than ninth. And another thing, as you said, they could step into these other timelines, which they can, because it's kind of good to look at the size of the universe in relation to densities as a cone, I guess you would say. Like, there's a bottom and the top of the cone. And we're at the bottom, so the universe, it's impossible to get from one end of the universe to the other. And once you get in the fifth, you're kind of in the middle of that cone. So you still need craft and everything to go from one end of the universe, but you can do it. And then you have ninth density beings, which are on the very tip of the cone. So the universe to them appears to be much smaller than all the other beings, and they pretty much just have to step outside their front door, and they are on the other side of the universe, pretty much. So like time and space in relation to density is how you should kind of look at it.
Yeah, because I was thinking, Raw Cloud had said something about that. Well, first of all, I've counted maybe five Trumps, six Trump. I know it's not the same entity. Well, are there doubles? There's a zillion different ways. I know the White Hats don't use clones, so that wouldn't be it. But I did happen to think, because I've heard that they're a time traveling family. The Trumps are. If you look at Barron and you look at President Trump and how he knows all this shit, he seems to innately know all this stuff. So what I was thinking is maybe he's skilled enough or masterful enough to, well, the way he's playing chess right now, but to access other of his other timelines and utilize those versions of himself. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I believe that as well. Barron Trump is a time traveler. Like I'm pretty I believe that Donald Trump's a time traveler, and Ivanka is probably a black. I've heard she's an ET, but I also believe she's probably a direct descendant of the Tsar, the Russian Tsar. And I've
Well,
heard
they were saying Melania was,
Melania. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, Melania, and also Vladimir Putin. I was told the KGB Putin was assassinated a long time ago, and he is the person they have in his place is a direct descendant of the Tsar. And that, I was also told, the whole mass technology and everything else is much more advanced. Cloning is much more advanced than we
yeah,
understand. And the white hats aren't really using the clones, but they're forcing kind of like the black hats, the Satanists, they're forcing them to do what they were going to do in a period of decades. They're making them do it like very quickly so the public kind of wakes up and sees what's happening because we have to be kind of, you know, we have something called DNA memory, I was told, all human beings, and it's usually like a traumatic event that causes an imprint on our DNA memory. Like in some sort of way, we all kind of have like a memory of the plague or any kind of major traumatic event. So these things with the shots and everything that people got and people getting
yeah,
this turbo cancer, and it's affecting people.
yeah,
And but they want it to. They want something traumatic to affect your DNA memory because he said we could step in right now and change everything, but it would just happen again in 100 years because we didn't learn a lesson. So we actually we have to learn a lesson of some sort to imprint on our DNA memory.
yeah,
And they're causing, all these ideas that these people had to destroy us. They're kind of making them do it right in front of us, but at a
yeah,
much more excelled, time. They're making it something that would take 40 years. They're making them do it in 4 and stuff. People kind of stand like, people kind of see it now and they look around and, if you implement something slowly, trickle, people just accept it over generations. But if you push something in someone's face immediate, kind of like with the whole transgender thing, and I think that's pretty much banned now. It's all but banned. And
yeah, it has been.
Mhm.
But I can see that where they're having to speed up their nonsense, and so if that it would have gone a lot better for them if they'd have been able to draw it out, and sneak it in little by little by little. Look where they came already, but I don't think those are normal people that are supporting this. I
Mhm.
think it's mostly their cult, and what that's composed of, your guess is as good as mine. What are they? Did they
Yeah.
all come from the underground? Are they these NPCs? Because it looks like they're breeding these kids, whether through the CIA, or I know the CIA sells CIA agents at some level, uh, will sell their children to the military complex for projects and things. And they don't even want their kids really. They
Mhm.
just sell them to the military.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, I'm thinking that's what these Antifa things are, and also hybrid children from underground, because they're so violent.
Hmm. Hmm. And I mean, there's all kinds of technology that can influence that as well. The 5G can influence that, aggression, things like that. They can cause people to, go from aggressive to crying and not even know why it happened. There was a book that Aquino wrote called Mind War,
Yeah, I
and
have that book.
yeah, and it actually came out in 1980. And it was like just a file for the military, kind of like a top secret file. And then it was published later in a book. But he wrote it originally for the U.S. Army in 1980. And I was told that when he brought that out, he brought out the whole flat Earth thing. And that
Well,
was like,
he said it was a psyop.
yeah,
Flat Earth was a psyop.
yeah,
And Juan told me that it was a Michael Aquino psyop.
it
But
was.
I have gone back in newspapers and seen where they were arguing and talking about flat Earth, round Earth, just every
Yeah,
kind of shape of Earth that you can imagine. And so, he must have dug that up from
dug it
either.
up, and it's just to cause confusion, and that's like the Satanist way. They want you to not know what to think, so you're easily controlled. That's basically the satanic way, and That, yeah, it's just war, chaos, drugs, rape, everything else. They want you to be
Yeah.
so chaotic, you don't know what to think.
Well, I think that's what they're doing now
Hmm.
with their stupid protests and their old people and walkers and stuff out there with purple hair trying to resurrect the 1960s.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, they were like, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Are you gonna let us steal your money? Or are you gonna side with Elon? It's like basically they're protesting so they can steal from us, which
Hmm.
drives me insane because why aren't people noticing this? It's like you think this is a valid, they're getting exposed for billions. And I think when the whole thing is finished with lawfare, that lawfare thing,
Hmm.
they've gone all over the world with our money on the most craziest things that you could imagine, but probably to them it has value. But like Sesame Street in Africa and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
you don't know what they're trying to do, but you know they're trying to do something.
Oh, it's yeah, the pushing agenda, this anti-human agenda. I heard about that thing with Africa and Sesame Street and how they just went overboard. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's just an agenda and they slowly implement it. And it's just the main cause of it, what they want the outcome to be of everything they brought out over since the 1950s is to eventually make pedophilia acceptable to the American people. Because once pedophilia becomes acceptable, civilization falls within 100 years. So they try to implement these things so the civilization eats itself from the inside out, and they really don't have to do anything. And they just kind of like teach people this when they're young. And eventually, as they get older and the whole transgenderism thing and everything else, because it was really pushed hard. Like, what was it, 7, 8 years ago? I mean, they pushed it on these children. And so I think a lot of these Antifa people and everything like that are kind of victims of that in a sense of, they're indoctrinated into it. Yeah.
As much as I despise them, I also do think they are victims in their own way because we don't know where they came from and where they've
Hmm.
been and have they been in a cage their whole life underground being tortured and now they let them up and of course they're going to and they say go out there and tear the city apart. Well, of course they're going to do it,
Hmm.
after that. Which reminds me, now this I wrote this question down since I just said that. Um, didn't you say that you had been to a place, and I think what you said there, that it was a craft. You were on a craft, you weren't on this planet, but there were a lot of humans and other ETs. You were in part of the military, but there was a place where there were humans in cages and that the guys told you don't talk to them or anything because they're crazy and out of their minds and they'll hurt you or something like that. But then later you found out these were real abducted humans that were like lifted off the planet and now held captive in these cages.
Well, I mean, I remember the children in the cages in the underground caverns, which are underneath the underground bases. And yeah, these children are like grown. They're produced. They're just for the sole means of adrenochrome harvesting,
Ugh.
and that's what these kids are used. And because of the fact that they never left the cage, they're feral, and they
Oh,
would
okay.
attack you if they got out. And yeah, I remember being drugged through these caverns and a little girl, I thought it was, slammed her hands on the front of this cage, and her eyes were like almost black. They were so dilated, and her hair
Wow.
was matted, and she was white as like a ghost. And I was told that that song, "Little Ghost" by the White Stripes, was about the children in the underground caves,
Yeah.
caverns, and things like that for this adrenochrome harvesting. And the certain verses of the song, because of my condition, little ghost, the one I fear the most, he's afraid people are going to find out. His condition is if he doesn't keep on doing the drug, he'll die from withdrawal because your body doesn't produce stem cells anymore once you start
Who's that
injecting it.
Jack?
Jack White.
Yeah, but I think that's was born a female.
It might be. Yeah, it might be. But yeah, I was told he was the main distributor for the music industry, that he would quit music pretty soon. And he did it several years after he got out of the Navy. He quit music because he made so much money off of adrenochrome sales.
I
But
think all of those, I think that whole hairband era and all of that, they've just been trying to push this trans issue subliminally so long.
mhm.
Even in the 40s when Joan Crawford was around. I mean, come on. You can look at that now and say that's a guy, you know, that is a dude. But
Yeah.
more than that, uh, I just started a favorite films section on my OK.ru channel. And one of the movies I put up there was called Queen Bee. And when Joan Crawford is standing at the top of those stairs and she's wearing all black and she's got black hair and her hair is done up in little horns on either side. She's got these great big shoulders and she's standing up there like this and just no waist. And it looks just like the Baphomet up there. Exactly. There's so much of that too. Those hairdos that those women had that went up in horn, they really were horns,
Mhm.
like ram horns and devil horns. It was like those were the hairstyles. And then, of course, they came out with the padded shoulders in the 40s. So everybody's got big shoulders, real women, and now the trannies can hide. So it's all been trying to fit them in. All the royal queens and kings and stuff are sketchy. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and it's to push that agenda, just that
yeah,
anti-human agenda, really. It's just, and confusion, and you don't know what to believe, and I think they find it entertaining. That this woman's a sex symbol, but she was once a man, but now she's a sex symbol. I think they find it entertaining as well, that the public.
I think they love it that straight men are lusting after because I think Marilyn Monroe is a man too. She doesn't have the sway and she's got a flat back. Also, once you start looking, it just they can't cover it up all the time. And you'll see them in a certain lighting and stuff, and you'll be like, oh wow, they really look like a guy in that shot. But you
I
have to
wouldn't doubt it.
Marilyn Monroe is kind of a cartoon person,
Mhm.
woman. So can you move back and since you've already been pushed into 5D by that reptilian? I don't know if you want to tell that story or not, but my question at the end of it is, can you now move back and forth into 5D and back?
No, but I was told by my XO, he said something went wrong when I was talking to him in the office before I left the Navy. He said you weren't pushed back into third density properly by the chair. You're still partially in fifth. And as he looked down my timeline, he became aware that I started to remember certain things from my past that I had forgotten. And it was actually when I was 11, my sister had a friend named Jen, and she really liked me. And she used to talk to my dad and I telepathically when we were kids. And she found it, she was very like interested in me. I always got taken around with my sister's friends and things like that. I was kind of like their mascot when I was like 11, 12 years old. And we went to Jen's house for a Halloween party. And she grabbed me by the wrist and drugged me into her mom's bedroom. And she was putting on makeup. She looked like a mix between Elvira and Stevie Nicks,
Oh,
like a
wow.
vampira.
That's not all that bad.
Yeah. And the woman grabbed my chin and like lifted my head up and locked eyes with me. And like the whole room kind of turned like orange and with like flecks of
Wow.
red and blue and red. And, all these colors were all around. And it felt like my aura was kind of blowing up. And
Wow.
she shook my head and kind of snapped me out of it, but it never really went away. And Robert told me that that's why you're partially in fifth, is because that woman did something to you. And the chair itself, the density chamber itself, didn't actually put you up into that fifth. So whenever it tried to bring me back down in a third, it didn't do it properly because of something that already had happened prior in my youth. But I mean, I'm not able to like go in the fifth, but there's a part of me because like for 2 years after that woman did that to me, it felt like I was hallucinating, and I was only 11 at the time, and it felt like a hallucination for years. And I think I just got used to it. I don't ever think it really went away, but Robert told me that was one of the reasons when we go back into the chair, because being partially in fifth, and living in a third density world is
Yeah.
very difficult, I guess, you
Yeah.
would say, to say the least.
That's kind of what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I think we're working on it right now. He never. I asked him if we would get to fifth density. We would ascend to fifth, and he would just smile and say, "You have to find out for
I
yourself."
think
He
we
wouldn't
are.
have.
I think that's what's
Yeah.
happening. And
Hmm.
remember, when we were going to do the first interview, he didn't feel good, and I didn't feel good because it was during the solar event, the September solar event. It was right after that full moon. And I was just wiped out myself. So when you said you were wiped out, I was thinking it's probably that moon. And that right now we're in between fifth. We're in this place, which apparently we agreed to come here and do this, but I guess this has never been done before to change densities this way. That we're doing it now, where we're not going to lose consciousness or anything weird like that. We're just going to live our way through it and have our DNA upgraded however they know how to do it. What do you think about this craft that's up there floating around? It's
Oh,
not
the Three
really
Eye
a,
Atlas.
yeah, it's not really a craft. I've heard it's energy,
Hmm.
that's what it is.
I don't know what to say. I know it's going to be closest to us. I think December 19th is what I heard, when it's going to be closest to Earth. I've heard all kinds of things. I don't know what to think of it. I try not to get myself too pumped in this, believing something too much.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as what the NASA scientists said, it changed trajectory, and like a comet or whatever, something that wasn't manned or intelligent shouldn't have been able to do that. And that's like the only thing I really know about it. And I really don't have that many speculations on Three Eye Atlas.
Well, there's a lot of things coming through downloads that it's a Palladian and an Octurian ship that has more, uh, what do you call it, like a showers. What's a kind of shower that can happen? Like lepton shower, but it's not a lepton shower, it's some other thing. Anyway, that's what's going to happen, and it'll just be another type of upgrade. Because I have a feeling these upgrades are coming in various ways that are organic, like the full moon, and then other things that they know how to do. But I've also heard that disclosure is going to be soft. We're going to have full disclosure, but they're not going to freak us out, like these people, they're already half crazy. So they're not going to land a spaceship or anything like that. But I think it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do because there's a lot of stuff to disclose.
Hmm.
People,
Yeah, I was told it would be like a soft disclosure as well, like because the people
yeah,
wouldn't accept it if you just brought everything out at once, and it's just going to be more of a small little technologies here and there. It'll be a trickle, but it'll eventually just start to pour out. But in the beginning, it's going to be a trickle, so people will accept it.
I've also heard that our psychic abilities will be upgraded. Uh,
Oh, yes, yes. Like I said, time is an illusion, but we see it in third density. But other beings can look up and down their own timeline. They can look up other people's timelines. They could. It's just we call it like predicting someone's future, but for them, it's something very natural that they all can do, and it's just because they're a
yeah,
higher density being, and the higher up you go in density, the more that time you can see time as an illusion. It's not real.
yeah. Um, so here's something. Let me know if you've had enough, if you don't want
Oh,
any more
okay.
of my
I
questions.
can keep going.
Um, didn't you marry like an alien and have a kid and everything?
Well, that was some. Well, Robert told me it was just he said, "What do you remember?" And I said, "I remember a woman tall, Sitting down, she had long silver hair, big blue eyes, big cheekbones. She had a boy on her lap. I kissed the boy on the head, and then I kissed her.
Was she
And he said that
blue?
was Mother. You had a son with her. And Mother
What
was like a
color was
rain.
she? Blue,
No,
white,
she was white. Yeah.
brown? What?
Yeah, she was white. They look very Nordic. That's what they call them, Nordics.
Oh,
Like
okay.
yeah. And I said to him, what, when he said you have a son with her, I said, "Do I have a son?" And he said you have dozens of sons and hundreds of daughters.
You've been
And
busy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was at first it was like deception. He said that I was their king for about 4 months, but it was just like a means of using me because the king gets over 200 princesses, and they could tell that they're polygamist. There's 30 to 1, I would say, of women versus men, about 30 women to every man. So it's common for them to have more than one wife. And the women go through a bonding process after they have their babies for about 10 months where you can't get near them. They just bond with the baby. And the men go through like a rutting process, I'd say about every 6 months for about 2 weeks. So it's almost like in their DNA
Yeah.
that they have more than one wife. It's just like the way they are. But yeah, Robert kind of said, he said they were just using you, but you didn't mind. Like he smiled and he said you didn't mind. Yeah, he also told me that third and fourth density beings see fifth density beings as naive. And the sense of if something is mutually beneficial for both of us, why would you ever betray us? They don't understand there's just some beings that just don't care and they want to destroy everything. They don't have that
Yeah.
mindset. So a big part of the, breeding program they had with me was also to kind of make them a bit more streetwise, I guess you would say, and a bit less naive because they liked the way I spoke to the reptiles and the way I dealt with them. I didn't trust anything they said.
Yeah.
They always seemed like they wanted to believe what they were the contracts they wanted them to sign, and contracts are very big with ETs, and
Yeah.
I just knew everything about them was deception when it came to the reptiles, and they were kind of intrigued that I would never trust a reptile, and I had a reputation of just never trusting a reptile because I already had experience with them in the Dark Fleet before I met them.
That's what I was going to ask you about because isn't that where you were saying everybody hated the reptiles? Like everybody on the ship hated them, but you had to like play the guitar for them and entertain them and just you you were stuck in a situation where you really didn't have any choice. They were definitely in charge of everything, and you had to, I don't know, I'm all, do you have to bow to them and everything? Didn't they dress up like kings and stuff in robes and all that stuff and hoods? Do they have hoods where their reptile face comes out?
Well, the one I met in the underground cavern that possessed the Kino had a hood, but I remember the ones on the ship. They weren't that tall. They were about as tall as a man.
Okay.
But they wore like a robe that drug behind them, and they looked kind of hunchback, and they looked almost like Skeksis from that old Dark Crystal. And if you actually find the footage of the first test footage that Jim Henson did for the Skeksis in his backyard when he was just testing them out, and recording them with a 8 millimeter film, um, they looked a lot more reptilian. And I guess whenever they had like test audiences it scared the kids so much, so they made them look more buzzard-like and less reptilian-like. But the original test footage of like the Skeksis, they looked almost like alligators or crocodiles, kind of like with robes on them. And yeah, I mean, the one in the underground cavern, he wore a hood, but like the other, yeah, and
And
the
he was like 7 feet tall or something. You said that you had never the first
The
reptile.
first one I saw,
Yeah,
yeah, it was about 9.5 feet tall. Yeah, he
yeah,
was like a warrior slash working caste because ETs they have like a caste system and they can genetically engineer beings to be stronger and faster
yeah.
and things like that.
But he was pretty nice to you, all things considered. You just were scared of him, as you were. I don't even know what I would do if I saw anything like that. Probably scream, but you didn't scream. I remember this. But there was a guy with a gun in there, And here you are with this like 9 foot monster that they're showing you. And the guy with the gun has the gun pointed at you because I guess they've shown these things to other people and they freak out and they go nuts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were rumors on the base of, people like running out of the quarterdeck screaming, saying there's like, a reptile monster trying to eat me. Help. People would talk about it and joke around in the barracks.
It's
Some
not
people
funny,
did.
really.
Yeah. But some guys couldn't handle it, some guys could, and I guess they found it entertaining that some guys would just flip out when they saw one of these things. And
But that's
yeah,
what the gun was for.
the gun was for me,
For
in
to
case
use
I
on
try to run
you and in
away.
case you not to use on the reptile.
Yeah.
They weren't even considering that the reptile, it was you that was going to be doing something uh,
Yeah, well, I
causing
was a slave by
problems.
that time. Yeah, and well, the guy that actually was hitting me with the weapon when I initially joined the program, I found out later he was an off-world German. And the off-world Germans are actually, they live around them when they're children and things like that. They integrate
Right.
them in their life when they're young, so they're used to seeing them. They're used to seeing these reptiles. And yeah, that was another thing. There was a lot of off-world Germans, they called them in the military, on
Wow.
this base. And, they were impersonating Navy personnel, but not really, because I found out later that, the United States lost the war of World War II, if you want to
Yeah.
say it. We won the battle, but they got us through Project Paperclip and everything else. They just kind of infiltrated us that way.
Well, also Operation High Jump
Hmm.
when Admiral Byrd went down there, and then they had all these crafts and stuff. Craft attacked the boats, and I remember reading one guy's account where he said this uh, disc, just like your typical disc, craft, they would rise. There was a bunch of them. They would rise up out of the water because Bird came in ships, warships, and then they would drop back down into the water, and then they would rise up again, and then they would drop down into the water. So with all these, the boats were like going like this and capsizing and everything, and they had to turn around, and they were also hitting them with beams. So they had the craft agitating the water, and then they had the other ones flying over and hitting them with beams, and they just like came and turned around and went back, and they ended up in South America where Bird did a interview with a Brazilian newspaper, Venezuelan newspaper or something, and he said if we were to fight the war today, we wouldn't win.
Yes, yes.
Covered that up.
Yeah, and that has to go. I was told about the Vril Society was real, and it was like
Yeah.
a secret society in Germany where the women never cut their hair. They thought they got their channeling powers through the length of their hair, and they eventually got in contact with ETs, and these ETs taught them where this technology was built or buried in Antarctica, and they dug it up and took most of it to South America and reverse engineered it there, and that's how they figured out how it worked.
Yeah, those Vril maidens, they
Hmm.
were from Russia. I don't know how the Nazis found out about them, but Hitler himself and Mengele and all of them, the real high up ones. Uh, I don't know exactly how the story goes. They didn't kidnap them per se, but they wanted to work with them, and I guess they sequestered them and gave them anything they wanted in order to do that. What they were doing is downloads exactly like what people are still doing now. But they were drawing up papers and directions on how to make anti-gravity crafts and stuff like that. And they grew their hair long because they claimed they're like antennas. And I think psychically long hair, that's why I'm growing my hair long. Really, it is. It's not aesthetically that I really want to have long hair, but I do believe that the hair is really important to aid with your psychic abilities.
Hmm.
But yeah, all that stuff was real. And then they went to that underground, inner earth under
Yeah.
Antarctica. Yeah. So you you got married and she didn't want to have anything to do with you because you weren't familiar with their customs and you didn't understand that at the time. Like you impregnated her and then she went into the room and closed the door, and every time you came around she was like, get out of here. Is that what happened? And then you went to your officer and he said, oh, that's just what they do.
Well, no, no, it was after she had the baby that's when they go through their bonding process. Yeah, and she wouldn't talk to me, and she only focused on the baby. That's how they teach them how to create a telepathic link, communicate as they call it, pretty early on in life.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I didn't know what was wrong with her, and eventually I was trying to hold the baby, and she struck me, and I had to go to elder. An elder was mother's husband, and he was very tall, very old. They get taller as they become older, and he
Really?
was over 3,000 years. And yeah, he told me that's just the way it is. And so and so, she's available. Why don't you go to her? And I didn't know that's like how it was, and I just while the one woman's bonding, you're just with the other wife, and yeah, and once you get more than one wife, the men come up to you and ask you who is your queen, like who's the one you trust the most.
Wow. Did
We
you
have to
have more
relay
than one
information
wife?
to you. Yeah, so when you get more than one wife, they ask you who your queen is, and
How
yeah,
many did
that,
you have?
oh, I mean hundreds for a while, but
Really?
I was happiest with just two. Yeah, but for a while I had hundreds, but yeah, but like I said, it was Robert told me they were just using you. It was a way they looked down my timeline and they saw that the only way that I would leave the women that I was with right now is if they played on my ego. And
Yeah.
so they offered me to be king. And that was like a way to play off my ego. And then I got all the 200 princesses after being a king, and that was the way it was.
You know, my dad wouldn't have minded that. He used to make jokes about women using him all the time, but that nobody wanted to use him. He was like, I keep waiting for a woman to come and use me for sex, but they're not coming. Anyway, yeah, that doesn't sound, it sounds like a lot of guys would not be bothered by that.
No, no, most men aren't. Yes.
And they sound like beautiful people. Like they
Yes,
look
they're
good.
very they're much more spiritually advanced than us. They're more technologically advanced than us. Um, they have kind of a system where their elders will look down the timelines because as they get older, they can look the furthest down the timeline. They get more experience, they can look further down. And they're almost kind of like they have this group of elders that kind of guides them in which way to go, which is best for their people. Which what is the best way to grow in the universe for their own people. And that's like what their elder community does. There's just like a group of elders that all they do really is they like meditate and they concentrate on what is the best timeline for us, what is the best course of action for us.
Well, that seems to be the most important, one of the most important things, actually, especially now with
Hmm.
all of us. We've got to make a choice which timeline we want to be on.
Hmm.
Do we want to stay in that 3D construct that are like just unbearable?
And that's what he said too. Like whenever I first remembered the kids, and I thought he was participating in this, my executive officer. And I said, not all my memories came back. I couldn't remember everything. And I said, you're going to hell for this. And he said, there is no hell. And I said, but there's a heaven. And he said, of sorts. And he said, if there is a hell, we're on it. And I said, what do you
Yeah.
mean? He said, Earth is hell. He said, there's no other world like Earth. We're the last ones in third density. There's no other world like us. And that's why we're getting outside help from positive beings is because we're being artificially kept in third density by these negative beings so they can just feed off our loosh and create war and strife and pain. And it's just it's like a way to create our world is almost like a way to create a drug for these beings. And these more positive beings have stepped in and said enough is enough.
Well, I think what happened, it appears that things got out of control, so to speak. But I do think that even though there are these beings, Comey said something like this to President Trump and it was like a public statement. It was something like Trump knows that they need us, talking spiritually
Hmm.
because he's part of this cabal. I kept thinking, we don't need them. What do we need them for? They're nothing but negative, dragging us down, feeding off our leash. But what I've come to believe, if you want to look at it this way, it's just what I believe right now. I don't have any proof of anything, except for the fact that I do believe we are all connected to source. And I do believe that even the people that are seem evil, quote unquote, serve a purpose and that they are on their own ascension journey. I've also heard that soul contracts include the babies that get sacrificed sign that soul contract so that everybody has a purpose in the divine plan and that we are all on a learning our a soul evolution of the soul, if you will. And so we climb up and then we go back down to learn new lessons and harder lessons. So it would seem to me, and I don't have any answers to this other than the fact that it would seem to me that hell would be stuck in the same place, having to learn the same thing over and over and over again. Like if you got stuck here, that would be hell.
Hmm.
This is just a shitty place.
And we are stuck here in a sense. I was told about the whole grid system over the earth, and that we live in a kind of matrix. And I guess this grid system, I don't know if it's the rings of Saturn. I've heard people say that it kind of just recycles us immediately into being reborn, because we're supposed to spend a certain amount of time, in the flesh, and a certain amount of time in the spirit realm is kind of like how it works to get recharged and things like that, get our soul or consciousness replenished. But we don't do that. We just immediately get reborn and reborn and reborn, and we're kind of trapped in this world and trapped in this matrix. It won't let us go, and it just death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. When it's not really supposed to work that way. You're supposed to spend a little of time in the afterlife and then
Yeah.
back in the flesh. Yeah.
But the way I look at it, if your behavior is so low vibrational that you're causing pain and all this stuff just to feed yourself, that instead of going up, you're going down. In other
Oh
words,
yeah.
you'll go to a worse place. Like I don't, we're as bad as we are. I'm hoping that we're not the bottom of the barrel. I'm hoping that these people could go down lower and have to learn more lessons,
Yeah.
very difficult lessons.
And
And so,
then there's
yeah,
like the NPCs. You think about it. I mean, a lot of people have lost their soul already if they were
yeah.
born with a soul. And it's just, what have you done? Have you just destroyed all your own values, your own integrity? I mean, I feel like that's like a good way of like losing yourself, losing your consciousness. And I believe this happens to people. And yeah, I believe that there are, a large portion of Earth of this people who have just devalued all their own their own integrity, their own core values, whatever you want to call it, and they've kind of lost themselves. They lost their soul years ago. And you can kind of see people like that, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I would take that a step further too and say while we are attempting to reach higher beings and connect to source, they are connecting to something lower and settling for immediate gratification in things that are not lasting, whereas we are moving in a different direction and we are focusing on changing ourselves permanently. And from what I understand, a lot of us have done this already before. It's not the first time we've done this kind of thing. Because I think it's funny because I when I hear these messages coming now, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And I'm thinking, I've been doing that. Like I always yell at the download because that's what I've been doing. So stop yelling at me and telling me to do it. But then I started realizing maybe I've done this before, and that's why I organically are doing these things, just from some kind of knowledge I have that I don't know about yet.
Yeah, we all volunteered for this, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We might regret it, but this is what we're here for.
I heard a download like that where the person said, we hear many of you saying, why did I do this? And
Yeah.
I wish I was not doing this. But we will tell you the end is near, and dear ones, they always cover you with love in their words and stuff, which, I don't see how uh, negative beings would be sending messages like that. But anyway, uh,
Mhm.
I I listen to the ones that resonate with me because of what you said, that that's the way they communicate is through downloads psychically. So
Mhm.
anyway, well, I have more questions, but this is how long are we? We're pretty long right now. I think we might as well shut this thing down. What do you
Yeah,
think?
we could do it again.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
And I want people to understand that the things that we're talking about now, he's had more memories, and they're all going in a book. And so when Daryl's book comes out, it's not going to be a rehash of all this old information. There's going to be a lot of new stuff in there. And so, yeah, the old stuff is always fascinating, still, even. Every time I hear it, I think of new questions to ask you about it. So I can't wait till you finish your book. And have you got any websites or anything you want to promote?
Yeah, my website is daryldjames.com, Daryl, D is in Delta, James.com. Most of my videos are there. I'll put this one on there. And yeah, I'm working on a book and it's almost about 60% done. So,
So I'm excited about it, and I hope you guys are excited about it. Daryl, thank you so much.
of course, thank you, Linda.